Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of the Current Review podcast. Today, we have on an exciting guest. We have Peter Schultz. He is a program manager on the Ford Mustang Mach-E Rally, and he's previously worked at Ford for a long time with automatic transmissions and eventually migrating into the EV space. And I think this is a very exciting conversation to have. So before we start, I just want to get into this with how did you go from working on internal combustion engine vehicles to working on probably one of the more exciting electric crossovers on the market right now?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invitation to be here and tell a little bit about the origin story of the Mustang Mach-E Rally. Never get tired of talking about it. So I've had a pretty nonlinear career path. So I've been at Ford for about 13 years now. I graduated from Michigan State University in 2012. And I was always a big time car guy. I actually grew up in Wisconsin, but I was way more interested in cars than cows. So so I went to school in Michigan, got a degree in mechanical engineering, and got hired at Ford immediately after graduation. As a car guy, the dream was to be driving around test cars, right? And I managed to, after the rotational program, I managed to land in automatic transmission calibration. And I was one of the calibrators for the 10-speed automatic transmission that is in the F-150, the Expedition and Navigator, things like that. And I really enjoyed that. I really loved being able to drive the vehicles and, be really hands-on and stuff. And experience the vehicles, travel all over the country, testing different kinds of conditions and such. I did that for about 6 or 7 years, maybe a little longer than that. But after a while, calibration is pretty much at the end of the development pipeline, right? And over time, I kind of realized, like, man, I am so into cars, and I want to have an effect on more of the car than just this one system. And I'm the kind of person sometimes that, especially when you're on that end of the pipeline, you end up shaking your fist at the air, like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, why are we doing it this way? And so I started thinking, like, maybe I want to be somewhere where I am that person, right? That, like, because I know what it's like on this end of the pipeline, that, I can have that perspective, like decisions made way up here, how they end up affecting downstream and not just internal customers, but external customers as well. Because, calibration is kind of one of the final interfaces between development and production and what the customer actually experiences. So from that, I decided to get look for opportunities elsewhere in the company. And there was an opportunity in product planning for EVs. So I really had not done anything with electric vehicles at all. But I really wanted to be where the action was, right? Like where the innovation was happening. And around that time, that was about 2021 when I was applying for that position. I mean, Ford is all in on EVs. That's where all the hype was about. The whole industry, everybody was super excited about it, projecting, that's where the future was, right? Was an electric vehicle. So it's like, that's, at this stage of my career, I want to be where the opportunities are. I want to be where the future is. And so I went from one end of the pipeline literally to the opposite end of the pipeline. So it was like I put I was in Ford still, but I put kind of a hard reset on my career, really. So I got into that position, and I was in the first, probably I was about 4 months in, and still really just trying to learn the ropes, and I was getting a little frustrated because I was so used to just being able to, like, contribute. Whereas, like, I was, like, in this phase of, like, I need to keep, like, learning and trying to figure this out while also trying to contribute. So I was, kind of like in between. I was sort of like doing little tasks here and there to try to, contribute that way. And I was in a section meeting, and my manager said, "Hey, we've got this email that's kind of come down the chain, asking us to investigate maybe a rally-inspired version of the Mustang Mach-E. Would anybody want to take a stab at it? Like, take a, just start a study about what this would take?" And I was like, "Yeah, yes, please. That sounds great." And not only did it sound really cool, but it was like, I feel like this is something that I can actually make a direct contribution immediately. it really just kind of fell into my lap, honestly. So there's myself and then one of the other guys on our team named Craig Migliori, was one of um, like one of the planning specialists. So he was in the same role, but he'd been doing it a lot longer. So it was kind of a two-man team starting out with, and we started out with nothing, right? We started out with that single email. And so we just kind of created a digital bulletin board and started, putting up pictures of Ford rally cars and stuff, and like the Mach-E 1400 and things like that, just trying to like draw in inspiration from all these different sources. I've got some friends that are into rallycross, started kind of picking their brains a little bit, be like, and we also kind of, we early on, we targeted SCCA rallycross, which is not like WRC, but it's still, it's more a grassroots motorsport. It's basically, if you're not familiar, it's basically autocross, but on dirt. You have a coned out course and you're trying to go around that as fast as possible. So it's not stage rally. You're not, sending it flying through the woods and, like huge jumps and stuff like that. It's not like that, but it's still, intense, and it's still, your vehicle needs a lot of capability and a lot of durability to be able to do that well. So that was what we targeted as our performance benchmark for what we wanted this car to be able to do. And we knew that it needed to be more than just, it couldn't just be a sticker package. If it was a sticker package, we get laughed at, right? We need to make sure we actually had the performance to back it up. So we started getting in touch with some of our counterparts in like the off-road development group, the off-road attributes group. And, that was things like that, my previous experience on the development side of things really helped me make those connections and also have access to certain systems and things like that really kind of enabled things to get going. But anyway, in the off-road attributes group, there was a guy named Chris Burchin who was like a rallycross fanatic, total rally nerd and stuff. And he ended up, really informing a lot of what this vehicle ended up being, what kind of attributes it needed to have, and what kind of modifications needed to make to really make this thing effective in rallycross. So, we started out, just in the first few months, we built a mule, kind of made a sort of a makeshift rallycross course, proving grounds to kind of see this thing even have wheels. Does it kind of work? And it did quite well, actually. I'm like, all right, we won't be onto something here. So yeah, to make a short story long, made it through, we kind of set the program assumptions, in terms of content, in terms of attributes, in terms of timing, cost, all of that stuff. And we got it approved. We had this really crazy go fast timeline, when we were going to deliver this car. The first email was sent in April of 2022. And our goal was to get this thing in production for the 2024 model year, which was absolutely bonkers. And especially when you're in a big company and things don't necessarily work as quickly as you want them to, we definitely got a lot of pushback early on. They're like, look at our timing, and they're like, what are you, nuts? But largely through the dedication of our team, really just exploring. Our mantra was the art of the possible. I'm like, okay, let's walk you off the ledge a little bit. What's possible? What can you deliver in this kind of time? And, at the same time, making sure that we didn't neuter it such that, the vehicle lost all its character, lost all of its performance. And, slowly but surely we got people on board. And we went from that first email to the first saleable car rolling off the assembly line at our production facility in 18 months. And vehicles started being delivered to customers in earlier last year. So and that was about 24 months total to like when the vehicles were first being delivered to customers.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So for some people who aren't familiar with the Mach-E Rally, or they may be familiar with some stuff, like it has a really cool white racing wheels and extended range battery and the Mach-E GT powertrain, what are some of the design tweaks and differences underneath the hood, or underneath the body, we could say, that some people may not be familiar with, that you could walk us through?
Yeah, so we started with the Mach-E GT because it's got that 480 horsepower, 700 foot-pounds of torque. We tweaked the suspension a bit. We raised the ground clearance by about an inch. We retuned the suspension for a little more jounce travel. We put bigger tires on there. The tires are bigger, wheel diameter is smaller. So in rallycross, you definitely want more sidewall. So we went from a 20-inch to a 19-inch, and then grew the tire a little bit as well. Different springs. We massively retuned the Magna-Ride adaptive suspension, which actually, ironically, like we tuned it to be really well, work really well in rally crossing, but also it kind of turns it into, between that and the softer springs, it turned it into really the most comfortable variant of the Mach-E to drive on the road. So it's the race car, but like it's actually very, very comfortable to drive in daily situations. Another big thing that we did was we added a lot more underbody protection. So instead of, you're kind of used to like that soft, like fabric-y kind of material that is used as like an aero shield underneath the vehicle, we replaced that with full aluminum underbody shield in the front, and we changed to a hard plastic one in the rear. So all of those things, and for rallycross driving, we added a rally sport drive mode. So we have a specific drive mode that is just tuned for that, and it redoes the pedal demand. It makes it more linear, so it's more predictable, and you can really kind of steer the vehicle with your right foot. It opens up the limits on the traction and stability controls, because in rallycross driving, you really want to rotate the vehicle, and we wanted it to work with you instead of working against you. Right. So we opened that up as well. And as I mentioned, retuned the Magna-Ride to be able to absorb those bumps, make sure you're maintaining control. And altogether, it's really not that long of a list of parts of what we did functionally, but it really had a great effect. And of course, we needed to make sure it looked the part for that rally name. So the white wheels were one of the things that, definitely a more controversial choice, but we were like, this thing is a rally branded Mustang electric SUV. Like, it's already going to ruffle a few feathers. So we were like, let's just embrace that, right? Like, just roll with it. And, when we looked at all these pictures of Ford WRC cars, about the last 30 years, every single one of them had white wheels. So that was like that was early on. One of the major assumptions that we made was that it needed to have those white wheels. And then I have a Ford Focus ST, so I like hot hatches. And you might notice that rear spoiler that we put on there was pretty much directly inspired by the Focus RS, the rear spoiler on that. So definitely got some of that hot hatch influence in there, and kind of some of the spirit of that Focus RS lives on a little bit in the Mach-E Rally.
I love it. I love it. I'm a big fan of the hot hatches as well. I wonder if the white wheels also had input from Ken Block. I don't know if he had any input at all, or if he was transitioning at that time to Audi. But yeah.
No, we didn't have any contact with Ken in that situation. But I mean, especially in Ford Rally history, there's a lot of number 43s up on that bulletin board. So I would have really loved to have the opportunity to visit with Ken and get to meet him, get to know him. By all accounts, he was a really awesome person, and like just profoundly influential on, like, I feel like our generation of car guys grew up watching those Gymkhana videos and stuff like that. And yeah, it would have been really great. But we did have a privilege to work with Vaughn Gittin Jr. A little bit, especially at the media event that we held at Dirtfish Rally School last year. We had some professional drivers out there, including Vaughn and Colette Davis, who's a Formula Drift driver, and Adrian Formeau, who was one of our WRC drivers at the time. He's now with Hyundai. But I gotta tell you, like, I'd ridden in the Mach-E Rally and experienced it, what it can really do, but nothing can compare to like getting and like riding shotgun with a WRC driver or a professional driver, like really, really whipping it. Like, it is absolutely bonkers. And it's astonishing that like the vehicle was capable of even more than I think that Craig and I dreamed up when we first started laying the framework for this car. So it was really a proud dad moment for me.
Very cool. I mean, I wanted to ask, like, given this short transition time from, stock Mach-E GT to the Rally, would you say, and I know you said you were at the far end development for automatic transmissions and then went to the front end, but would you say like the fact that it was an EV helped like the tweakability of it? Because a lot of things are electronic change. You had mentioned there's a lot of things that were just kind of like electronic or program changes. Would you sort of say that because of that, you were able to change it so quickly, and that perhaps we'll see more variants of the Mach-E because of the tunability?
I think I'd say that just pretty much all modern automobiles are ultimately software controlled. There's a lot that you can do with tuning and calibration and such, and software. Like, they're all software driven vehicles. Especially my experience on the software end of things, working in calibration. There's still, I was working on automatic transmissions, but I was still a powertrain calibrator. We still have powertrain calibrators for electric vehicles. It's different. The input parameters are different. The knobs that you have to turn are different, but a lot of the same principles still apply. So I think that also helped really inform kind of what's at my disposal here. What are the things, like what are the knobs that we have to turn without reinventing the wheel here? And I think being able to understand that early on from my prior experience really helped us keep the program in scope. Because if we came with this whole list of, huge software tear ups and changes and stuff that we wanted, then it would have gotten shot down immediately. But, my prior experience really helped me know that, okay, if I kind of frame it this way, if I, stress that we're taking advantage of existing tools, it's just a recalibration, it's not new software or whatever, that actually made that work really well. And it shows the skill of our calibration teams as well to, without massive reinvention, they were able to, make a vehicle that not only performed extremely well in its intended purpose, but also it's got a very distinct personality than the rest of the Mach-E lineup. So definitely a lot of credit to our software calibration teams and our vehicle dynamics team as well. Really did an excellent job tuning this vehicle.
Interesting. Now, I have one question. So I'm very familiar with, like, in theory of like product development from some of my IE classes, but kind of with your experience, what does it look like in this short time frame that you have to bring out this very radically different variant of a vehicle that most people are kind of familiar with? So what does it look like? Is this like contacting suppliers to make sure they have the right parts for what you're looking for and stuff like that? And how's that like general pipeline work?
How do I describe this? It's a lot of different relationships that not only happen within the company, but also like relationships with supply base and things like that. We definitely did, look to see what was off the shelf. A lot of it was, hey, we want all these things. How do we look at it through the lens of what is realistically feasible, given the realities of development time, just all these things. You can dream of the world, but if it's not rooted in reality, then it's never going to see the light of day. So we definitely had to make sure we kept that in mind, again, without sacrificing the spirit of the vehicle and the soul of the vehicle in doing so. So, we engaged our engineering and design teams early on. After we kind of created this list of, okay, these are the things that we think need to happen to make this thing legit and to make it worth making. So yeah, it was shocks, wheels, as far as like new tooled end items, right? You got to figure out what, anything needs to be tooled. That's what you got to fire up first, because there's going to be tooling times that are involved with that. So getting our engineering teams, developing the CAD and things like that. And this is really an international effort, because we had engineers in the US, in Mexico, and in Brazil that were all working on this project and making it happen. Our supply base was also varied. a lot of what we did was, there's a whole supplier onboarding process that can be very time consuming. Anything that took a lot of time, we're like, you got to find a better way. You got to find another way to do it. So a lot of that was, depending on our existing supply base and saying, hey, you're already doing this. What can you do? How can you deliver it? Instead of going out and finding somebody new, let's leverage our current supply base and lean on them. And they were able to deliver. So that was huge.
Interesting. And just one other question. This is kind of more on the suspension, and I'm just very curious about it. So I haven't driven the Mach-E with the Magna-Ride suspension, but my parents used to have just a regular, it was Mach-E Select. So it was on the, I guess, standard springs. So could you kind of explain the difference of the Magna-Ride and the non-Magna-Ride suspension?
Yeah, so like a non-Magna-Ride suspension is what we refer to as a passive suspension. So it only, it's one, whatever inputs you get, certain, outputs, right? You have your shock absorber that's tuned a certain way. You have your spring that's tuned a certain way. That's it. There's whatever you get out of that, depending on what the input is, that's just what you get. It's, that's just how it responds. So the Mach-E Select and the Premium, and, we used to have two different versions of the GT. The base GT also had a passive suspension. Whereas Magna-Ride is, I forget, I don't know how you pronounce it. It's like Magna-Relogical, I think is the word. Big, long word. Magna-Ride's a lot easier to say. But the way that it works is it has metallic particles actually in the fluid, in the shock absorber. And by changing the current that you have flowing through that, then you can actually actively change the viscosity of the fluid. So that changes the damping. And it's a very complicated system, but it's very tunable. So it's responding on, especially when it comes to like velocities of, the impact and stuff, like how fast the piston is moving inside the shock absorber and things like that. It'll respond to that. And again, big credit to our vehicle dynamics teams, just really mapping all that out. And so not only was that able to give us a lot of leverage to, really make the vehicle more comfortable to drive, but also very capable. So not only did it give us a lot of opportunity to, like I said, make it more comfortable, but make it very capable on the rally cross course, it also, has really enabled us to, with our selectable drive modes, whether you are in Whisper or Engage or Sport or Rally Sport, you can really give the vehicle very different behavior in each of those modes.
Interesting. Now, just on that real quick. So depending on the drive mode you're in, does that immediately affect the viscosity of the fluid in there? Or is this more like something that reacts depending on the road surface you're driving on?
It really does change it. Going between the standard modes, I don't think you'd really perceive it as immediately. Think about it this way. There's a calibration table that has, multiple inputs, and then you have an output value for current probably. But then when you're selecting between modes, you have different maps that you're pointing to, right? But I will say that when you put the Mach-E Rally into Rally Sport mode, it's kind of cool. You definitely feel it immediately because the car is kind of like, all right, this is what we're up to now. Okay, let's do it. Like it's kind of fun.
That's super cool. That you had mentioned in the process that you had sort of gotten a lot of great input and feedback from like the off-road development team, and that you as a rally person or sort of like a car enthusiast in general, hot hatch person, obviously influenced it from your experience, but there's a huge community, right, of people that were big fans of the Ford Focus RS, sort of tuners and modders.
Right.
So how much did you take input from them early in the process, and then how has it been received by them since releasing it?
I think like I mentioned, Chris Burchin, one of our off-road attributes engineer, he is that guy, right? And we had him engaged from day one. I think between myself and Craig, the other planner that he was also an enthusiast like myself, I think just kind of having us each involved with the program, and just really, and I was, when it transitioned from program approval to like working through the development and launch process, that was when I transitioned from a planner to a program manager. I was actually asked by the team to stay with the program. So I was able to kind of get that cradle to grave of the whole program from day one to production. And I think by keeping that team together, and being a part of that, we're able to kind of make sure that those things were not compromised along the way. They're not lost along the way. That didn't just get neutered along the way. I think as far as the question was often asked, who is this for? Right. I think that was a lot of question a lot of people were asking, and it's like, who's really going to rallycross this thing? And I guess to answer the first question, who's this for? And like, I think this one's for the nerds. This one's for the weirdos that like love like cars that have a lot of personality and are just different, that don't want their car to look like a bar of soap, especially in the EV space. It's an easy trap to fall into. I think it's really for those people that are like, this is different, this is cool, nobody else is going to have this, and really like geek out over that kind of stuff. And, from the reception that we've gotten from customers since then has been a lot of that. Like, I think the white wheels are a good example of that. It's one of those, if you get it, you get it, if you don't, you don't kind of thing. Some people are like, this is stupid, these are awful. But people that, that get it, those nerds like that, are like, I know exactly what you did there. That is cool. I love it. And it's like one of their favorite parts of the car. And yeah, they've definitely responded very well to that. And I think too, our electric vehicle customers in general tend to be people that love what's new, are not afraid of something that's different, things like that. The EV adopters like that. And I think that also counts for new experiences. So I think there's definitely been customers that probably never rallycrossed before, that was never anywhere on their radar. But like, I got this car that's kind of built for it. It looks pretty fun, so let's give it a shot. And it's been really, really cool. Again, another proud dad moment is seeing our customers actually going out there and entering their local SCCA events and things like that, and competing, and really show them what's possible. We actually entered one of the Detroit region SCCA rallycross events with a Mach-E Rally with one of our drivers who was behind the wheel for our 500-mile rallycross durability test that we did. So he's got a lot of wheel time behind that car, and it was the first rallycross he had ever entered in. And it was kind of our debut with the Mach-E Rally. And not only did he win the stock all-wheel drive class for the day, but he actually laid down the fastest lap times for the entire day across the entire competition. So it was really, really, really awesome to see, just kind of show everybody like, hey, this is what this car can do.
And kind of because you mentioned the customer base, maybe not exactly for the Mach-E Rally, but just the Mach-E in general. Are you seeing a lot of these customers being customers who are brand new to Ford, or are they loyal Ford customers? Do you have any information on that?
Definitely some of both. I don't have the data to look at, but I definitely haven't, like, on the forums, there's it's a very active community, right? And so I keep pretty close tabs on forums and on Facebook groups and things like that. And there's a good mix of loyal Ford customers and enthusiasts, like maybe had a Mach-E already, maybe they got to 2021 and their lease was coming up, and they're like, this rally version is interesting, right? It kind of piqued their interest a little bit, try something new and different. But also because it's new and different, I think that also drew in people, other people that were like, hey, this maybe electric cars, or maybe I was bored with my old one and this looks new and interesting, so I'm going to give this one a shot. So there's definitely a mix of both. I don't actually have the data, but that's just what I've observed from online communities.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's the thing, because I think at least with the Mach-E, because I've known a fair amount of people, a lot of them are just like, this is a really cool, maybe they weren't interested in buying a Ford SUV at the moment, but then they're like, okay, cool, this is cool and electric and it looks cool. So it's really interesting. And as we sort of wrap this podcast up, I had one kind of question to ask you, and this is, with your experience in engineering, kind of transitioning from internal combustion to electric, what is like some of the big insights and takeaways you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'd say is that, especially as like the entire industry is, experiencing upheaval, and, there might be a lot of people that are wondering what's next, and people that are like in the engineering field that are wondering what's next. I think it's important for us to always be learning, but also the skills and principles and things that you learn, even working in internal combustion engines, I think more of that applies than you think, as far as like doing the job and doing the development work and things like that. There's a lot that's new, but I think the engineering education really trains. It's not just teaching you things like thermodynamics and calculus and stuff like that. It's training your brain, right? So I think the key is having an open mind, being hungry to learn things that you don't know before, but also lean on things that you already have learned and what you do know, and you'd be surprised how much you're able to carry into a role developing electric vehicles.
Cool. And before we end this, I just want to mention, so I can't remember the last time I checked the Ford website, but is the 2025 version of the Rally out now, or is that going to be like a few months down the road?
It's very, very soon. I think we're going to be delivering 2025s, not just the Rally, but all of the 2025 Mach-E's in first quarter.
Okay.
They'll be hitting dealerships very, very soon.
Okay, cool. Sounds exciting. And thank you very much for joining the podcast, Peter. I enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.